Hey guys, welcome back. Joe here again from ScaleFreak.com, coming to bring you the install of the SAK-D4831, which is the Xeon ACG, which is the anti-camber grip mixing linkage for the D4, the Sakura D4. Now, this is basically the rear, it's a rear suspension upgrade. And it's a very neat one. For all you racer guys, you may have never seen anything like this before. And you know what? For all you drifter guys, you may have never really seen anything like this before. It's a really neat upgrade. So first, basically what it's going to do is it's going to add a couple shocks this way, which is going to, well, you know that you get the old school linkages that connect and make the hub carriers straight up and down, or at least however you angle them. Well, this is going to make it a little bit more active, a little bit more dynamic, and allow the body to actually, or the chassis to sway a little more without impacting the camber too much of your rear tires. But let me get into this and show you exactly what it is. Now, first, I've already gone through and stripped off all the stock stuff. So I took off the stock turnbuckles, got all the ball cups and everything out of the way. No need to see those come apart. Now, also in here, I've already built the shocks. I already have enough videos on showing you how to build shocks. And I've already built the linkages because, again, I have enough of those already. So really what I want to do is get into the actual install of this part. Installation's easy. Set of pliers. Well, for this one here, I also use my trusty STRC shock tool. If you don't have one of these yet, consider it. It's amazing. I've used it hundreds of times, and people have borrowed it hundreds of times, and I've had this thing for years. It's amazing. You will need, of course, the wheel hex wrench because you have to get your wheels off. A 2.5, a 2, and a 1.5 is what you will need for the install of this system. Super, super easy. Let's get started. So first, both sides, of course, you have to build a shock. We also have to get the linkages and stuff like that all installed. Now, number one, for the top part, basically, you're going to build one of these. We're actually going to build two of them, and it's super, super easy. So the part comes like that. You got a couple bearings. Let me see here. Bearing number 1 and bearing number 2. And of course, they're going to slip into each side. Now, this having a nice pink anodizing on it, of course, the tolerances are going to be exact. So do your best to get this thing as flush in there as possible. I mean, it'll go in. Just something hard against it to press it. And then, of course, the second bearing and the same. So get them in there nice and flush and flat. It makes a difference. It makes a big difference, actually. I'm just going to grab something here to make sure. That looks like it's in there perfect. Done. So that's how that goes together. Now, of course, you've got this little dude here. It's kind of a threaded insert. That's going to go into this end. Well, you pick whatever end you want it to be in. Make sure it will spin on there for you nice, which is perfect. And then, of course, it's just a tiny, tiny little shim. Oh my God, that thing is tiny. Like that. And then, of course, a wee tad bit of a spacer, because this thing is actually a countersunk screw. Now, this project has a lot of metal on metal. So, of course, when metal on metal is involved, so is thread lock. And as I've talked in the past, I do use this bad boy here, Loctite 222. If you look it up on the Loctite website, there are a lot of different Loctites that you can choose from, and I find the 222 is the most successful for the RC stuff. So when you're putting this on, just try to make sure that little shim under there stays as center as possible. And then what you do is hold onto the bottom part, because that whole thing is going to spin inside. So see the bottom part, how it's going to spin. After I drop it a couple times, see how it's going to spin like that. Just kind of hold on to the bottom of it. You don't have to crank it. Just snug it down a little bit, and you'll be good like that. So then, of course, you've got these two little bad boys. A couple little of those. So again, you're going to use a little bit of thread lock on there. Just do that and do that. I just started them because I'm just going to put a drop on the side. Drop and drop. And for these guys here, I'll just hand screw them in like that. And then I'll just grab my 2mm, finish them off. Easy enough. Ta-da, and ta-da, done. So that's nice and tight. So now onto the shock tower we go. So basically what's going to happen is there is a bit of a standoff, and you're also looking for this giant screw. So the giant screw goes through the top of the shock tower. See where it goes through? and then the standoff goes on, and then this little bit goes on, of course, the threaded side on the back. Now, because this whole thing is threaded, the screw will have absolutely no problem going in. But again, we're talking metal on metal, so before I get that done, let's put a drop of the Loctite on there. There we go. And get this bad boy screwed in. So use your 2 mil and screw it down. Now, again, that center spot is going to spin, so I just put my thumb to the front of the part. It's enough to keep the whole thing from spinning. It will lock itself down, and there it goes. It spins nice and free. So that's how that part goes on. Now, I'm really going to do the one side and then do the other side off camera. So then what you're going to do is, of course, grab this little dude here, which is going on the top of your hub carrier now. So I'll just kind of put that axle back in there and leave that bad boy right there. Now, what's neat about this is there is kind of a little ledge underneath. You can kind of see it there. And that means that it will fit on here exactly where it's, wrong side, exactly where it's supposed to. So bing, it'll go on. There's holes, multiple holes, but the instructions only call for a couple of them. So now we're going to flip over to our 1.5. And here's what's going to happen here. So there are 2 holes, whatever. This is what I'm going to do to make sure I get it locked in the first time. So first, I'm going to put the giant grub into the correct hole, the inner hole on the top of the carrier, and then I'm going to slap this guy on top. And now, because that inner one is done, ta-da, it's going to line up. Switch back to your 2 mil, grab the little screw, and then put the other in like so. And this will line everything up exactly perfect. It's plastic, you don't have to crank it, just tighten it down like that. And now that's on there. And of course, that little grub is still hanging out a little bit. See it there? Because, switch to your 2.5, one of these big bad boys is about to go on right there. So again, put a little bit of thread lock on the top of that guy there, because this is going to be metal on metal. Ta-da! And tighten it on. You do not need to reef it. Again, you'll actually, if you hit this thing too hard, you'll actually pull the little grub right out of the plastic. But boom, there we go. So there's that one. Now, what else I'm going to do is get one into there. So switch back to your 1.5. Where is it? Where is it? There's a little grub there. And you know what? I can't believe I did that. I threw this part on a little bit too quick. So let me just pull that back off. Back out, back out, back out. Because, of course, ta-da, you have to be able to get into that first. So I'll put my 1.5 back on, grab my grub, back in, bury that sucker into here. Now, careful how far you put that down. If you crank that sucker down too far, you'll actually make contact with the outdrive, in which case you'll be putting a lot of wear and tear onto the system itself. So it doesn't need to be absolutely hammered down. Yes, there will be a shock connecting to it, but it's not a shock that's going to see a massive ton of movement, so you should be okay. And again, put my 2.5 back on, and put a little bit of thread lock on there. Of course, that's way down in the kit, so let's actually put the thread lock right into this little dip. Bing, there you go. And put this bad boy on. Ta-da. Okay, so that's on there now. Now, one other thing I'm going to do while I'm doing this, you know what, I might as well, because the shock is in my hand, I'll snap this sucker on there. Now, you'll notice in here on each side of the shock, one side of the hoop is either bigger than the other. That's just basically because it's going to slip over really nice. Now, this is another reason why it's good to have your wheel hex ready, because when you throw it on here, it actually makes it easier to get into tight spaces and apply some pressure to pop these suckers on. I've said a lot of things about Sakura, and one of them is that their ball cups and their shock hoops are no joke. These things are tight. There you go. There's one. Make sure your outdrive's on there, guys. Make sure it's on there nice. And then there's 2. So now, look at that. Your hub, or your hub carrier actually has some movement on a shock. How neat is that? So some adjustability going on here. It's starting to work out. Now, maybe one thing I also might suggest, which would work, is even before you put this little bad boy on, slap one of the the turnbuckles on. Now, when I build my turnbuckles, what I do is I actually pay attention to how I've built every other turnbuckle in the kit, because these turnbuckles all have a tiny little notch in them, which basically will help you see which way you adjust this if you're adjusting the length of the turnbuckle. So I always make sure that that notch is to the left side of my kit. So while this is off, I'm going to pop this bad boy on. There we go. So that's on. It makes it easier later. And then now we'll put this thing on there correctly. Now the thread lock is still on this thing, so I don't need to put any more. And ta-da! Switch back to my 2mm and thread this sucker on there. Just like that. Done. So nice on there really well. Now, of course, on the outside here, we're going to do the same thing. This is still the 2mm one. Put a little thread lock on there, and the hole is right there. Crank it down. Boop. And then now I've got this turnbuckle. I'm just going to snap this thing on right there. Done. So now, if you look, if I make this adjustment, you'll see that that whole thing is moving. Or I can even crank it here, and the shock moves. So that's how that works. Kind of neat. Give me a minute. I'm just going to throw the whole other side together off camera, show you how the rest of it goes together. So now with both sides, both shocks, both top parts installed, you can see that I've got the ability to really adjust my camber from the center. But really, what good does that do? So here's where the mixing part comes in, is of course I do have that smaller link. That's going to clip into the top. There's one. And there's dose. Snap. So now this whole back end is linked together. You do still have, of course, your top to bottom shock, but now this bad boy here can sway back and forth and adjust. So as the kit moves around, the back end can actually actively balance its rear suspension. It's pretty neat, eh? Now, hold on. Let me throw the wheels back on real quick, because that will actually help you kind of see a little more dramatically exactly what this thing is doing. Let me see. Put one on here. Done. And then the second one real quick. And done. So I got that set up. Now watch. So if I kind of look at this way, this adjustment here, you can see the tires will actually move together. Now, why? Well, in drifting, weird, I'm used to the racing stuff. So in drifting, what's new to me is the fact that this stuff, you actually want your chassis to sway. But when your chassis is swaying, you'll actually notice on my front tires, they are angled. So if these things happen to change their camber from their suspension, that's fine, because my tire has actually got a nice radius to it. But the rears are typically flat, and they kinda will wear in, and you don't want to lose even that much more traction. You want these things to be able to control. So if the chassis moves, if the chassis sways to side, this will help the back end actively keep the tires exactly where they need to be, depending on what happens to the chassis. There's also another kit that you can buy, which is this big other linkage kit that you can throw in here that really finishes the whole kind of back end and makes it, that puts the shocks to the inside, and it really makes it a much different system, actually, and it's pretty impressive. But the problem with that is I have not figured out how to install all of those systems while maintaining my stealth mounts. I will be putting my stealth mount back on this kit a little bit later. I just wanted to get this video done so you guys could see exactly how this all goes together, and then I'll worry about the stealth later. So that is the anti-camber, what's it called? The anti-camber grip rear or mixing linkage for the D4. That's exactly what this thing is. So it adds a little bit more weight to the back. It adds 2 more shocks to the back, and these puppies are ready to go. Just one more little thing for the drift kit. Really interested to see what kind of performance update or increase this thing makes on here. And thanks for watching, guys. So as always, please remember to click on the like button, please, for the drift kit. Like the drift kit. Click on the share, click on the subscribe, and of course comment below if you have any questions or if you've got this on the back end yourself. Maybe I need some tips on how to set this thing up, because I have no idea yet. But thanks for watching, guys. Have a great night.